Hi, everybody. My name is Larcine. I'm a very grateful member of Al-Anon. And I want to thank Denise for being such a wonderful hostess. She's just absolutely done a terrific job, made me feel very welcome. And I want to thank Desi and the committee for asking me. It's a privilege and an honor to get to be here. I'm having a wonderful time. I love this part of the country. I love the hospitality. I love the food. The food is good food. And because I live in the land of gluten-free crap, so it's just great to be here. And I'm having a wonderful time. I can't thank you guys enough again. It's a real honor and a privilege to get to be here. I've met a lot of wonderful people, and you have great speakers, and I know them. I know Sterling really well. I've had the opportunity to share podiums with him and Teresa, and I got to meet Bill. And, they say a good conference is like a good orgy. When it's all over, you don't remember who it was that made you feel good. So hopefully that'll be your experience this weekend, To me, that's what the program really is. When did I first laugh? When did I really first start feeling good? But it happens here, and nobody's ever more shocked about that than me. I remember the first time I heard myself laugh out loud in a meeting. I had to turn around to see who was that. It was such a foreign thing to me. And I'm so grateful that it's such a big part of my life now. So, sometimes it's a little bit intimidating to be the only Al-Anon speaker at an AA deal. I liken it to being the corpse at an Irish wake. No one expects you to say much, but they can't have the party without you. And I know my slot. It's Saturday. It's usually during the golf tournament or something like that, and usually I come and usually they have, the giant, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and then somewhere in little tiny print it says with Al-Anon participation, That always pisses me off more than I can tell you. Because, boy, when alcoholics are in jail, they want Al-Anon participation, huh? Yeah, and we're really big on Al-Anon participation. So, it's great. But what I really do appreciate is I very much appreciate you having Al-Anon here. I very much understand that, Al-Anon and Alcoholics are definitely two separate programs, but I think that when we get the opportunity to have these kinds of weekends, it's a celebration of life and recovery. And as my sponsor always likes to say, we got sick together. Isn't it so wonderful to be able to come together and get well together and laugh together and share our recovery? So I thank you guys very much for including Al-Anon in your conference. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like for me today. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. My dad was the master sergeant in the Army, so when I was born, I had automatic rank right out of the gate. My husband jokes that I came out of the womb carrying a clipboard and wearing an armband, and he was not too far off the mark. When I was in school, all my life I was, cafeteria monitor, room monitor, playground monitor, and why? Because teachers knew if anybody did anything wrong, I would write down their name and they would get reported. I don't know what to tell you. It's just a gift I have. It's just I can watch what other people do wrong and report them to the proper authorities. I'm all over that, and if you're on an airplane and that plane's going down, you want someone like me in the exit row. Trust me, everybody will get off in an orderly fashion, If you're pushing and shoving, you're going to the back of the line, and again, what can I say? It's just a gift that I have. But I grew up in this house, this military family. I was born in Germany. We moved every 2 years. It's just the way it was, and but I also grew up with an alcoholic dad, but I had absolutely no idea my dad was alcoholic, because how are you supposed to know stuff like that? Nobody gives you a manual when you're born about what parents are supposed to be doing or not doing, and my dad just drank every day. My dad got drunk every day, and growing up, that's, living in military housing with other military families, that's just what went on. I didn't think there was anything extraordinary or unusual about that. There were lots of moms that walked around with black eyes, broken arms. Nobody ever did anything about it or said anything about it, because you would do nothing to interfere with your husband's, career or his service. And again, it was just, what I know today, it was very much, it's an ordinary life in an alcoholic home. It was just very much an ordinary life in an alcoholic home. But my dad was, he's a master sergeant in the Army. He's a really loud guy. He's a very intimidating guy. And of course, the more he drinks, the drunker he gets, the more loud, the more intimidating, the scarier. And my dad was a mean drunk. There's just no other word for it. That's just, I don't know why, what makes some guys, falling down, love, want to kiss you kind of guys, and then other guys just, so mean and angry. But my dad was a very, very mean and angry person when he was drinking. And so we learned early on, just do what the Sarge tells you to do, straighten up, fly right, follow orders, blah, blah. And my dad ran our family like he ran the Army. We had little bunk beds with Army blankets on them. We had little foot lockers at the end of our beds. We had room inspection, and my dad would pop a quarter on our blanket, make sure it popped. He'd check our locker out to make sure our gear was stowed. And, I'm 5 and 6 years old. Yes, sir, right there at the end. And it worked for me. I like that. I like the order. I like knowing what you want me to do and how you want me to do it. Didn't work so much for my sisters and my brother, but it worked really, really well for me. And like I say, my dad just had this, just this really gnarly attitude. And when I was really new in Al-Anon, even still today, I went to lots of open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're new in Al-Anon, I cannot recommend that enough. It says in our Al-Anon literature that we should learn all we can about the disease of alcoholism. And I know no better place to learn that than in open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the very first AA meetings I went to, the AA speaker that night, he talked about alcoholism, the family disease. And he described alcoholism in the family as having a coffee table in your living room, but everybody pretends it's you have a rhinoceros in your living room, but everybody pretends it's a coffee table. And my perfect example of that is growing up is like, my mom could get to where she could tell where my dad was going to have one of his alcoholic explosions. We'd be at the dinner table, but she could never say to us kids, okay, nobody talk, nobody move, because your dad's going to blow up, because if she said that, my dad would explode. So if you grow up in an alcoholic home, one of the first things that goes out of the window is any form of verbal communication whatsoever. So my mom would speak to us facially. So if you're sitting at the dinner table and mom's like, that's not an epileptic fit. You know exactly what that means. It just means everybody shut up, look down at your plate, try not to breathe if at all possible. But if you have an alcoholic that's going to explode, nothing is going to stop that from happening. So one of us, out of 4 kids, some minor infraction, somebody would scrape a knife on a plate, or a little bit of milk would spill out of your cup, and my dad would go ballistic. Dinner would go flying. Everybody'd get a beating. Everybody's got to go to bed. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it doesn't matter. Kids got to go to bed. My mom, the dog, it's just the way it goes down in our house. Then the next morning you get up the nerve to get out of bed and creep down the hallway because you got to go to school. And there's my dad in the kitchen having his breakfast beer. And you walk in there and it's good morning. What do you want for breakfast? And no one said, gee whiz, what was that about last night, Dad? Gee whiz, how come you had to hit everybody? How come you had to break everything? Because the coffee table just goes back to, the rhinoceros just goes back to being a coffee table again, because you hope today will be different. You hope today will be different, and that's just the family disease of alcoholism, what I know to be very ordinary behavior growing up in an alcoholic home. That's just what was going on, and if you've ever had a drunk dad show up at a school function, you know that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization is just not reserved for the alcoholic. So when you start doing good in school and, getting awards and things, you just don't tell your parents because you can't take that chance. And the same thing about bringing kids home from school anymore, because if you've ever been chewed out by the Sarge when he's drunk as a skunk, it's not worth it. It's just not worth the embarrassment and the humiliation that goes along with it. And so needless to say, when I got to Al-Anon, I had a lot of resentments towards my dad. My dad ended up dying at the age of 55. He died the disease that they talk about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, total insanity and death. I cannot even tell you the last words my dad said to me. They were so violent, so vulgar, I wouldn't even begin to repeat them from this podium. And I always say the last words my dad said to me. What I really, truly know now is the last words my father's alcoholism said to me. Because that's who was talking to me that day. Like I said, my dad had total wet brain, and it was an awful situation. And but when he was dead, and my mom had since divorced him, so all his care and all of that fell to me. I'm the oldest, and I was taking care of him. And when the doctors came out and told me and my sisters that my dad had died, I'll tell you, our reaction to that was like, ding dong, the witch is dead, da da da. And I don't tell you this because I'm proud of it. I tell you this because this is where the disease of alcoholism takes a family, that someone dies and you're glad for it. Just because for us, we really believe this reign of terror was finally over. This horrible deal was going on. And, and what I really got to find out is, the alcoholic died, but the alcoholism was still very much alive and living in my family, totally untouched by my father's death. And I got to find that out because when my dad died, my dad died in October the 13th of 1981. I started coming to Al-Anon in June of 1981. So I had been coming to Al-Anon barely 6 months at that particular point. So 6 months into Al-Anon, I was not really fast here. So I was not to the loving, forgiving, kind portion of the program by any stretch of the imagination. I was still suffering greatly. But I did a lot of work with my sponsor about all the resentments I had towards my dad, all the anger I had towards my dad, all the embarrassment and humiliation, things he had done, the beatings, all of that stuff. Just a lot of bad stuff. But I did everything my sponsor asked me to do, and I did all the step work on it. And, and it didn't seem to matter, no matter what was going on. Something would happen, something would trigger, a thought for me, and I would remember one of those episodes and one of those things that happened, and boy, it's just living it all over again, all pissy all over again. And I don't know how you guys are, but when I'm really pissy and angry, I like to take it home and share it with my family and the people that I love and care about the most, because that's the family disease of alcoholism, just likes to spread it all over the place there. And I remember one time talking to my sponsor, not wanting to live my life that way anymore. And she said, Larcine, you did all the step work, you did everything I've asked you to do about, your dad. She goes, but Al-Anon isn't about the problem. Al-Anon is about the solution, and we know what the problem is, but we got to find an answer for you. So she says, I'm going to give you an assignment, you're not going to like it. And she always said, you're not going to like it, because I never like any assignment my sponsor ever gave me. I always think they sound so cheesy and stupid. But anyway, she said, what I want you to do is I want you to go home and I want you to think about a good thing your dad has done for you. And my initial reaction is, there's no such thing as that. That just doesn't even plain old exist, because what I know about the family disease of alcoholism is it never wants you to see anything good in your family, even if it's staring you in the face. And so I didn't know that I could do that. But one thing that I learned right out of the gate when I came to Al-Anon, and again, it's God's gift to me. I have absolutely no idea why I picked up on it. But I heard right out of the beginning, you have to be willing to do something different if you want your life to be different. And for whatever reason, I was able to hear that. So I've always been willing, no matter what's been going on in my life. Even if it's just this much willingness, but I've always had this much willingness to do it. So I told her I would try and go home and think of something, but I really didn't think that such a thing existed. And I don't know how long it took me, 2 or 3 weeks. And then I remembered that my dad taught me how to drive. And if you're going to live in Southern California and marry an alcoholic of your own, it's a skill you simply must have if you're going to track those little suckers down. And so he taught me how to drive. And I remember thinking, she's not going to like it. It's pretty flimsy, pretty stupid. But if you have a sponsor like I have a sponsor, people don't get sponsors. I never understand that. Sponsors are like having your own personal rooting section. They want you to do good. They really do. It makes them look good. You look good. It's just a win-win situation here, So please avail yourself of that. And it never seemed to matter what I did. My sponsor was just always thrilled that I'd made the attempt. And I remember, I said, I thought I saw a good thing about my dad. Oh, you thought I'd come up with a cure for cancer. She was ecstatic. And, but then I thought, well, I'm going to blow, she's going to lose some air out of her balloon when I tell her what it is. And then I said, well, he taught me how to drive. Fabulous, she was just, oh, that's wonderful, and so, because then, let me tell you, what you learn after a sponsor gives you part 2, trust me, there is part 2 coming, okay? You don't know that when you get part 1, but part 2 was, from now on, whenever you think about the crap that happened when you were a kid, the things your dad did to you, I just want you to replace that with this positive thought. Because we're not going to undo any of that. That's over with. You've done the writing, you've done this. You have to move into the forgiveness part of it. And the way you do that is again, it's attitude. Attitude is everything here. One thing, my most grateful thing about Al-Anon, and when I think about every day, is what it does for me every day is it gives me the shot at a good life, if I choose to take it. It gives me the tools, it gives me the people to show me how to take a shot at a good life if I want to. If I don't, I can fall back on how I've been affected by the disease of alcoholism. Because believe you me, that does not want me to have a good life. Doesn't even want me to have a good shot at it. And even though my circumstances don't change, but how I can look at it, that's what makes all the difference in the world. It's not about pretending that things didn't happen. It's about knowing that they happened. Okay, and now what are you going to do about it? You're going to live in the pain. You're going to live in the misery. You're going to take all that crap that happened to you a long time ago and make that your day and then your future, as well as your family. Because forgiveness is a huge deal here, absolutely, positively. Because, I always, I didn't have this horrific childhood with my dad, and then my sponsor gave me this little weenie assignment, and now it's all better. You know, what she did was she gave me a very precious gift. She gave me the gift of forgiveness, and never underestimate the power of it. You know, after my dad died, like I said, my mom had divorced him, and, you know, so I had all this stuff, and I was the, you know, executrix of the will and blah, blah, blah. And my dad was you know, he was in the Army. He was a World War II veteran. He was a Korean War veteran. He was a decorated veteran. And, you know, he had a lifetime in the service, and so he was cremated, and so they, the military brought me his ashes, brought me the flag, brought me his medals, brought me his uniform, and as it turns out, you know, the day they came over to the house, I was home by myself, no kids, no husband, everybody was gone, my sisters were since gone, and so I'm at home all by myself, and they give me my dad's ashes and all of his stuff. So I take my dad's ashes, and I went down in the garage, and I put them on the shelf in the garage, and I said, you sit here, and you think about what you did. And and he stayed there for a long, 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 long time. You know, every time I go down to do the laundry, you're sorry now, aren't you? Yeah, okay, let's talk about this, let's talk about that. And it's always funny here, but don't tell that story at work, because they don't think that's funny at all. Their eyes just get really big, they're all horrified, so don't tell that story there. But anyway, when I was 17 years old, I met my husband, and you know, and up until that point, you know, my dad he's got a lot of rules about us girls dating, a lot of rules about us girls dating. So every time we're going to go out with any guy, we got to bring this guy home to meet my dad, and my dad is over 6 foot tall, you know, and he's this master sergeant guy, and he's got one eyebrow he can raise like 6 inches over his forehead, so he looks like Satan himself standing there. And we'd bring these little weenie guys home to meet my dad, and my dad would stand over them and give them the master sergeant drill. Where were we going, what time we had to be back, and what part of their anatomy he would remove if we were not returned in the virginal condition of which we left the house in the first place. So very, 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 very hard to get a second date in my house, almost freaking impossible. You know, that's the way I remember it. But my sister told me, you know, yeah, but the fact that Dad always had a hand grenade or a firearm never helped matters either, you know. But again, when you grow up with crazy alcoholics, you know, I mean, my dad was always going to blow up the mailman or the Helms Bakery guy, you know, and that just becomes regular, that's just regular stuff, you know, you don't think that it's weird anymore or whatever, you know, and that's why I have no qualm with me, the non-drinker, how we become sick and affected by the disease of alcoholism too. You know, because when you're living with the craziness and the insanity day after day after day, somewhere in there, you know, I have to do some justification of this behavior, so it's okay for me to be living in this world because this is the world that I'm living in, and not totally lose my wackos all over all this crazy stuff that's going on. You know, and again, and this is how I become affected by the disease of alcoholism, even though I'm not the person that's drinking. Just as affected by the disease of alcoholism. So, but anyway, when I was 17, I met my husband. I should have known there was something wrong with him because my dad liked him right away, and that like never ever happened. And we went out on this bowling date, and then we were going to go back to his house. And my husband's several years older than me, so I was like 17. He's like 23, 24 years old. And we're going to go back to his house, and he's been married once before and has a child, and but he's back living with his mom and dad, which should be clue number 2 to me that there's something wrong with him, but that went right over my head. And we stop at a liquor store, and he asked me what I'd like to drink. Well, I'm 17 years old, and there's rules and regulations in California about how old you have to be to drink. So I proceed to tell him the rules and regulations in the state of California. I'm an underage minor, buddy, and I know he heard what he still hears today when he doesn't want to hear what I'm saying. He heard blah, 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 because he went into the liquor store and got a gallon of Red Mountain wine. Nothing else to impress me of his knowledge of liquor and wine, I guess, I don't know, and his ability to drink it. And so we went back to his house, and we were with this other couple, and now we're going to play this game, and it was a board game, a legitimate board game. It's called Pass Out. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of it, but there is a really, truly game called Pass Out. It has rules. I read them. And now I don't, you know, and of course, to win this game, you have to drink. Now, I don't drink because that's against the law. But, you know, I have, you know, many, you know, like this constant Rolodex. I've got an index card for every conceivable thing that can happen on the place of the earth in my brain. I just do. And if I don't have an index card for that, I will make it up because I'm that kind of a person. I am hardwired that way. That's who I am. I like to check things off my list. This is the first thing you do, the second thing you do, the third thing you do. This is just what I do. And and I got a lot of rules about, you know, how I'm going to do things and how things are going to work out. that. Now, I don't drink because that's against the law, but I have another rule that's more important than the non-drinking law, and that's the I must win every game I play, or what the heck. So sometimes I got to shift the rules around sometimes, and you have to do that when you're dealing with alcoholics because they're very surprising people. You never know how the game is going to change. So anyway, so I don't know what I had, a half a glass of wine. That's all. I just had enough to win the game. That's what that was all about. And then of course, he'd had a lot of wine. And now, what you need to know is up until this point, I'm 17 years old. All I've ever dated is little weenie, geeky, A-straight students just like me, pencil-pushing little geeky dudes. I've never gone out with anybody like this. And like I say, 7 years older than me, 7 years older than me, and he's like been married before, and he's got tattoos, and he's a hippie guy, and he's got hair, down to here, a beard down to here, and jeans, no underwear, another clue they're an alcoholic. Just in case you're wondering, I'm just putting it out there for the new people. I don't know what it is with alcoholics and 2 pairs of pants, but it's more than they can manage most of the time for whatever reason. And it's true, so don't be talking to me about it afterwards. And but anyway, and I want you to know I'm 17 years old. I am telling you, the house I live in, you can cut the hate with a knife. My parents absolutely hate each other. I mean, alcoholism totally destroyed anything and everything that was going on there. And as far as us kids growing up, it was just like, house is not where you want to be. And I call it house because it never felt like home at all. It was just, every time I think about that, emotions of just nothing but fear and insecurity and what's going to happen. And, you could just cut the hate with a knife. And I want you to know, at 17 years old, boy, I had an index card about what my life was going to be like. And nothing like this crap that I grew up in. I'm going to get married to somebody, and he's going to love me, and I'm going to love him, and we're going to have great kids, and we're going to love them, and everything's just going to be Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best going on down there. None of this crap is going to go on. And believe you me, one of those things on that index card is this guy's not drinking. This guy is not drinking. But yet I go out with Butch on this first date and just had an absolutely wonderful, fabulous time. And I have to change my index card. Where, like I say, I grew up with this really, really violent alcoholic. Butch is just the complete opposite of that. He's drunk. All he wants to do is hug you and kiss you and tell you how pretty you are. And that is something I can work with. I just think that's something I can work with that, okay? There's just some potential there, as we've heard spoken of before. So definitely something to move on there. And so anyway, so that's pretty much, how he and I, we took off. And this past Wednesday, we were married 38 years. So it's a miracle. And but anyway, we started dating. It was really hard for me to date Butch, basically because he couldn't remember my name. But you can't let a little thing like that, stop you from dating an alcoholic. That should be the hardest thing you have to go against. It's called me Lorraine, Lucerne, whatever. Just go. And and I know my name is weird, and it is weird. And my dad named me Larcine. My dad had, his first 3 children were girls. Finally, my brother came along as the 4th. But my dad hated having girl children. It just very, very beneath him. And but because I was firstborn, the only thing he gave me this very special gift. He named me Larcine, and he told me that Larcine was the name of a town in Scotland. And my dad was hugely, hugely proud of his Scottish heritage, very much so. So even the fact that I was a girl was bad, but the fact that I was firstborn, he bestowed this name upon me. And, then, much later after he died and all this stuff, I started getting curious about my name. And so this is way before computers and Google and stuff. We have places called libraries where you go to look up information. So I went to the library to look up Larcine, Scotland, and I couldn't find it anywhere, but we just have a little local library. So I went to the reference librarian. I asked her if she could, research the downtown Los Angeles library, the great big one there, and get me whatever information she could on Larcine, Scotland. She took the information. Fine, come back in 2 weeks. I did. I come back, no Larcine, Scotland, no such place. Okay, now I'm getting pissy about it because I'd been to the big forgiveness of my dad, and he named me Larcine, and now I find out there's not even any such place. So I'm getting tickier and tickier about it, and one of my good friends in AA is a big golfer guy, and I guess he goes to Scotland every year because I guess it's the golf mecca or something in the universe over there. And he said, there's not Larcine, Scotland, but maybe there was Larcine, Scotland a long time ago because it's a pretty old country. Maybe it just doesn't exist anymore. Before you go crackers, why don't you let me go check it out? So he goes, and he was gone for about a month, and he comes back, and no Larcine, Scotland. Never been such a place. Now I'm freaking changing my name because I am really ticked off and pissed and just really, really mad about it. And then I had another really good friend of mine in AA come up to me at a meeting, and he said, you know, Larcine, your dad's alcoholic like I'm alcoholic. I have absolutely no doubt about that. He goes, but you know what I think? He says, I think your dad just read it wrong, you know, or something like that, because, you know, what I found out is that Larcine is actually a Scottish word. And I'm like, oh my God, you are kidding me. What does it mean? And he goes, it means father was drunk when daughter was born, so daughter got a weird name. And that's the Scottish interpretation. And now I am pretty sure that that is not true. I mean, I am almost positive of it. I haven't researched it at all. And but, you know, again, you know, but what he went on to tell me is that I think he just, you know, I think that he meant to name you after a town in Scotland. You know, I don't know how drunk he was the night you were born or when he actually came up with the name. He says, but the fact that that's what he meant, does it make the gift any less than what he wanted it to be in the first place? Now, you can sit there and be pissed about it and ticked about it, because if you really want to go with facts, then you really shouldn't be messing around with alcoholics now, should you? You know, I mean, that's just not going to work. But again, one more time, you know, the circumstances haven't changed. My name still means nothing. It just pretty much does. But I know that my dad meant for it to mean something. And again, one more time, I come to you and I bring you this problem, and you just show me a different way of looking at it, and I get a shot at a good life if I choose to take it. You know, or I can sit there and be pissy about something that I can't do a darn thing about. You know, and that's the magic that happens here. That's what makes us all come together all the time. You know, that's just such a blessing. I can't even begin to tell you. But anyway, what ended up happening is after I was dating Butch for a couple of years, I ended up getting pregnant. Don't care if it's a big deal for you. Huge, huge deal for me. Because later on, when our life got really, really bad behind the drinking and using, I was sure it was because God was punishing me because I'd broken the big rule and the big regulation above. I had to be an Al-Anon a while to find out that if you're going to screw around and not use any birth control, you might get pregnant. Just a fact of life. But if you're sitting in your chair and you're blaming God for all the crap that's fallen down on you, you know, because that's the kind of God you have in your life as a punishing one, then you might as well get on up and walk on out the door, because I don't know how you cope with the punishing God. The God that I have found for myself, that I have heard so many people share about here, is a loving, forgiving, understanding God that will only want you to be happy, joyous, and free. That's the plan, and it's always been the plan. You know, it's this crazy thinking that we have that makes it think, you know, that tries to make us think otherwise. And so anyway, after our son was born, 3 months after our son, or about a month after our son was born, we got married. And so if you ask me if I was pregnant when I got married, no, I was not. I wasn't. I had a 1-month-old baby, but you figure it out, not my problem. And because it's all how you see it. It's very, very important, right? It's all how you see it. So anyway, and up until that point, I've never discussed with Butch his drinking or his drug use. Never had a discussion with him about it at all. But the day after we got married, I sat him in the kitchen chair and I told him the rules and regulations of the marriage. And I told him we could get a babysitter once a month, but that was it. Otherwise, he's working, I'm working, we're saving money, we have kids, we have responsibilities, I have an action plan, you're on board. He sat in the chair, did this, which I know to be affirmative, and you know, and until 2 days later when he doesn't show up all night long. You know, this is a huge violation of the rules and regulations. I have sat down. You know, then I found out, you know, 2 days later that he was so freaking, you know, drunk and loaded. He was just doing this thing, you know. He didn't hear it, you know, he heard the blah, 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 blah part. And so 2 days later when he finally comes in that night, you know, now I've watched my mom for years be silent. You know, I am proud to report to you, my husband begged for the silent treatment. Never got it, not one time. I was like one of those little dogs when you walk in a room, just and curse. Good Lord, I don't even know where I learned this language from. But, you know, again, you know, I call it information from nowhere because I'm, you know, who do you talk to about this stuff? You know, I don't talk to anybody. I figure it all out myself. Information floating up here in the universe lands here, becomes fact for me, and I act upon it, you know. So I knew the silent treatment was not the way to go with him at all. And, you know, and cursing and doing all this stuff, because I was sure that if I had the right mothers and effers in the right, you know, spiritual order, you know, that he would have a spiritual awakening and be struck sober by my language or something. I don't know. But again, information, you know, because what do you got to do something. And, And he jokes that the reason I talk as fast as I do is I only had so much time from when he came home to when he passed out to tell him everything it was that I was going to tell him. 'Cause by God, he was going to hear it. And just the absolute crazy insanity thing, and we pretty much took off out of the gate. Absolutely, positively took off out of the gate like that. But what I want you to know is that when Butch and I got married, we got married in a church. The fact that we had our son absolutely positively a driving force behind that. I'm not going to say that it wasn't. But I want to let you know that two people got married. We got married in a church. We got married in front of a minister, that we took our marriage vows, and we were as sincere as two people want to be when they're getting married. He was sober that day. I believe that he loved me. I know that I loved him, and that we wanted to take care of each other and cherish each other and do all those things that anybody wants to do. But what I didn't know that day was it wasn't just Butch and Larcine that got married. It was also the family disease of alcoholism. And I'm here to tell you the family disease of alcoholism doesn't love or cherish anything or anybody. It means to tear your family apart. And to the family disease of alcoholism, it's irrelevant if it's the alcoholic or the non-alcoholic. It really doesn't care. It just means to tear your family apart from the inside out. And we pretty much took off, on that absolutely insane, crazy roller coaster thing. And, and then he started getting progressively worse, as the big book says, and the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing was going on. And one night he comes home at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's so drunk he demands to have his dinner, and he's shaking me awake to make him some food and stuff, and he startled me. He'd never done anything like that before, and it scared me. It was like my dad all over again. So I scurried into the kitchen, but then I woke up and I remembered who he was dealing with. And I'd made this Mexican casserole that night that called for 1 jalapeno pepper, but I had a whole can full of those suckers left in the refrigerator, so I just chopped up every single one of them and stuffed him in there. And he ate it. He's so drunk he doesn't know nothing. So, and then next thing I know, he's in the bathroom puking his brains out. And I'm in my bedroom just laughing in my pillow, because I don't know how you guys feel, but when my alcoholic throws up, oh my God, I just get such a warm feeling. Just, it's wonderful. It's just, this is where you go. This is where the family disease of alcoholism takes you in a very, very short amount of time. And it's just the stuff that was just constantly going on and getting worse and worse and worse. And one time I remember my husband did a lot of drugs as well as all the drinking stuff. And his friends, whom I refer to as scum of the earth people, these were the drug dealer people. One time they call me at home, and my husband is at their house, and he is so loaded and so drunk that if I do not come get him, they, the drug dealers, are going to call the police. This is the situation. This is the type of person I am living with. And so, of course, I put on my cape, and off I go to get him. And I put our infant son in the back seat, and I get there, and there he is in the drug dealer's bushes. And I'll never forget it. One of my fond memories is pulling up there, and the drug dealer's looking between the Venetian blinds to see if I've arrived to get him. And I get him in the car, and I drive him home, and I take our infant son and go put him in his crib, and I come down to get my husband, but he's made the fatal mistake of getting out of the car without my help, and he's fallen into the street, hit his head on the curb, blood is gushing out. I'd like to tell you I'm concerned about him. I am not. All I'm thinking of is get him off the street before anybody sees him. Now, he's 180 pounds of wet washcloth. I cannot pick this guy up. So I heave him up by the ankles, up over the curb, dragging him down the sidewalk, little trickle of blood right behind his head. And this guy drives down the street. Now, why we call these people normies, I have not a clue. But this guy's driving down the street. I'm dragging a guy bleeding by the head. He stops the car and says, "Are you having a problem?" Yes, my husband's fallen and he can't get up. And so the guy helps me get him up. Now there's blood dripping down his face. I've never had this happen before. I don't have an index card for it. I got to make one up on the spot. Now, we have our bedroom. We're in a townhouse, and so I had to, and the bedroom's upstairs. So for whatever reason, head injury must be in bed. Goes on the card. I got to do it, So that's what's on the card. So not only do I have to get him in the house, I have to get him up a flight of stairs. And the words are flying between him and I. We get to the top of the stairs, and Mr. Good Samaritan no longer wishes to participate in this whole thing. So he's out of the door like a flash. Butch is on the bed, big puddle of blood. Now, I very much want my husband to die. There's no doubt about that, but I don't want my fingerprints anywhere on anything when that happens. So I don't know. So I call 911. I'm hysterical. They don't know what's going on. They sent a hook and ladder truck, paramedics. They even got a hold of my mother. It's ridiculous. And I'm in the bedroom with the baby, crying, and my mom's in there, my husband, no. And the police come in and they go, "Mrs. Gantner, your husband says he injured himself because you pushed him down a flight of stairs." And I said, I didn't do that, but if you prop him up, I'll be happy to push him down in front of the police department. And, of course, just the usual insanity that goes on there. And they told me that wasn't necessary, and they cleaned him all up. Turns out he's just got a little weenie cut and needs some stitches, but he's too drunk to walk, so they got to take him by ambulance to the hospital. So in the ambulance, on the gurney he goes. They're taking him down. Now, Butch is a very friendly guy. He knows all the neighbors. I have never spoke to anybody. We've lived there for like 3 years. I know nobody. And, and Butch comes out on the gurney. Hiya, Frank. Hiya, Joe. They're all out there. And Butch, what happened? Larcine pushed me down a flight of stairs. And they believe him. They all believe him because all they ever see is easygoing, friendly Butch and banshee screaming Larcine, So, and I'm the good guy here. I'm the one that holds it all together. I'm the one with the job, I'm the one trying to fix it. And I see none of it. I see none of it. All I know is pain and hurt and pain and hurt. And, and so we have the fights, and we have all the yelling, and we have all the screaming, and we got the 2 little kids that we're trying to bring up along, while all that crap is going on. And, and many, many times in my head, I would hear my voice say, shut up, just walk away, just leave it alone, just leave it be. But I could never do that. It's just that screaming, ranting, raving, because what I knew is that I thought he's hurting me, so all I know to do is hurt back. Even though this is a person I love, even though this is a person that I really care about, I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. And then one time we were going to have this big deal. It was my husband's family reunion. My husband's 1 of 9 kids. It's a big deal. And I'm the only alcoholic in the bunch. Lucky me. And I make him raise his right hand, promise me he'll be sober that day, and he does, so we can go and be this wonderful family. And the family reunion comes up, and guess who's so drunk and so loaded he can't even stand up? And I am so pissed, so angry. So I start egging him on. Now, I want you to know, no matter how drunk or blacked out my husband has ever been, he's never, ever raised a hand to hit me. That's just not what he does. So I'm poking him in the chest, and I'm egging him to hit me. Let's just take it to the next level. Let's just go there. And all of a sudden, I became very conscious of our 2 little boys, who at that time were like 5 and 3 years old, and they're standing on either side of me, and they're yanking at my pant legs, and tears are running down their little faces. And they're begging me, Mommy, Mommy, please stop yelling at Daddy. And I would like to tell you that I had a moment of clarity then, but I absolutely did not. What I started doing was I started screaming at those little boys. How dare they tell me to stop yelling at their dad when their dad is the reason our life is the piece of crap that it is. And by the time I got done screaming at these little boys, I watched my drunken husband walking out the front door. And I, the sober mother, say to the drunken dad, where do you think you're going? And the drunken father turns to the sober mom and says, I'm leaving because we're upsetting the kids. And I'm not telling you this story because I'm proud of it. I'm telling you the story to tell you where the disease of alcoholism took me, and I'm not even the person that's drinking. And I think I'm the good guy in this situation. And all the time I think I'm shielding my kids, from their dad, when they were always just fine around their dad. They needed protection from their screaming, yelling, whack-a-mole mother is what they did. I mean, many times I would come home and my husband would be so passed out, so loaded, fearful that he'd OD'd or whatever. I keep checking his pulse or doing whatever. But the boys, they were always fine around their dad. He'd be passed out in the kitchen. Boy, they'd build Tinker Toy bridges over him and tie Tonka trucks to him and pretend he was Gulliver, just whatever. That's just the insanity and the craziness and all the stuff that went on there. And somewhere in all that nutsiness, I went to an Al-Anon meeting. A friend of mine I'd gone to high school with. Her mom had gotten sober, and her dad was going to Al-Anon. And I called him and I asked him to take me to an Al-Anon meeting, and he did. It was a great meeting. And they had good literature on the thing and everything else like that, and I sat in the front row, but they read stupid stuff, they just they said, if I wanted to do something about me and for my kids, they could help me. But we weren't going to talk about the alcoholic. Well, what's the point? I'm sorry. And then they said, if somebody's drinking bothers you, this is where you should come. Well, there you go. This Al-Anon works for people who are bothered. Do you have a meeting for pissed people? Because that's, that's a whole nother level of nirvana. I need a pissed people meeting. Because if it just bothered me, I'd be okay. And, and I'm here to tell you that, that if you're here and you're looking for a reason not to be here, it's so easy to find. So easy to find. But if you keep here, you get just this much willingness to do something different. Because I'm here to tell you at that meeting, when I was sitting in that front row, if they would have said to me, Larcine, do you want your life to be different? Oh my God, do I want my life to be different? What are you willing to do about it? Nothing, because it's not my fault. See, when you got somebody else to blame for everything else that's going on, then you don't have to take any responsibility. It never occurred to me that I'm a grown woman now. Now what am I going to do about what's going on here? No, I'm just going to sit there and suffer and blame it on somebody else so that I really don't have to do any work here. And, so that was kind of like my Al-Anon career. And, my husband's drinking went on a while, and it got really, really bad. And, on his last drunk, on a scale of 1 to 10, I wouldn't even give it a 5, and why that's the one that got him sober. I mean, that's his miracle, and that's his story. But he did get arrested for drunk driving, and it's no big deal because my husband's been arrested a gazillion times for drunk driving. But, this was back in the 70s when they never much did anything about it. They usually let you go the next day. And sure enough, the next day, I went to go pick him up, and they had released him. But I know that God was working in his life. I don't know that he was working in mine, but my husband had made a surrender that night that I didn't know anything else about. And I know now that it happened because I picked my husband up from drunk driving and I didn't say a word. And believe you me, it takes a power greater than anything you've seen in your life to keep my mouth shut. So somebody was working on Butch's side because I didn't say anything. And I was even surprised I didn't say anything. And then we were home for a couple of days, and he was upstairs sleeping it all off, and I didn't go upstairs, another miracle. And he came down 2 days later, and he says, I think I have a problem with drinking, because you know how quick they are. It takes a while for them to get it, but eventually they come up with it. And as it turns out, I had called this hospital. They had just opened this program, just started it. This is in 1979. They had just started this program, and I had called to see about getting my husband committed to it. And they said, you can have him committed when he's drinking, but after he sobers up, if he doesn't want to stay, we don't want him because we're only interested in people that are looking for recovery. So they gave me the number of this doctor. So when he said that thing, I gave him the number of this hospital, the doctor. I said, they started this deal. I don't know what it's about. You can call. And again, he made the call. And I left the room. I didn't stand by the door to hear what was going on, nothing. He made the call, and he ended up getting into this, 21-day treatment program that they had at this hospital. And I'm very, very happy to report to you, that my husband's maintained his sobriety this entire time. And this July, he'll have 33 years of sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I am truly, truly grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous because, believe you me, you saved the life of a really good man. You absolutely, positively did. And I always get teary at this part, and it's not because I wanted him to live, because I didn't, because I really wanted to be a widow desperately at that point. But I always get teary because I always think about it. If my wish had come true and my husband had died, my plan, and then I want you to think about that woman, that screaming woman raising those 2 little kids, and I want you to think about what kind of a family you think we would be 33 years later, if there was even a family existing anymore. Because it's not just the alcoholic. It's the family that gets affected by the disease of alcoholism, One time somebody asked me, why didn't you just divorce him? And I'm like, and let him win? I don't think so. That's not going to happen. If he's going out the door, it's feet first. And that's just how that's going down, because I got a card, and that's not going to happen that way. But anyway, he gets introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, when he went in the hospital, it was all about the alcoholic. Boy, there was no family treatment, none of that crap. They just said, you should go to a Al-Anon meeting, So okay, fine, I'm a rule follower. I went to my a Al-Anon meeting. I went back to that first meeting I'd been to like 2 years ago. Sat in the front row, and we saved the last 10 minutes for the newcomers. And so that meeting, 10 minutes newcomer, raised my hand. I said, I was here a couple years ago, and I asked you how to get my husband sober, and you did not tell me how. And I am not going to tell you how I got him sober now. And do you know what they said to me? Keep coming back. You got that right. And I want you to know, especially new people in here, when they tell you to keep coming back, that is because you have said the most stupid, ridiculous crap. That's your only hope, is that if you keep coming back, so you can finally have a chance at it. Because, of course, that was my attitude. He's sober, I win, game over, nanny, nanny, nanny. And my husband, he was sober a couple of years, going to meetings, and I went with him in the beginning to make sure he heard the stuff he's supposed to hear because he needs my help. But after 6 months, I'm like, holy crap, there's only 12 steps. How stupid are you, is this going to go on forever and ever? And he made it clear that AA was the most important thing in his life, and this is what he was going to do. And then he was sober a couple of years, and he talked me into we'd never gone to conference or done anything like that, and they have this big conference down in Palm Springs. Then it was the Palm Springs Roundup, now it's the powwow. But 5,000 people show up, and it's sold out. And So anyway, we hardly had any money, just all that wonderful new sober stuff, paying off all this debt. But we go down there, we get this really cheap hotel, and I went to the family meeting. And they had an A speaker, an Al-Anon speaker, and an Al-Anon speaker, and that is where it absolutely positively happened for me. I just became that much willing that day hearing those people speak. So when I started coming to Al-Anon, I started coming for all the right reasons. I didn't come to get somebody sober. He already was. I didn't come to keep him sober. He was doing fine on his own. I came because I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And other things were going on in my life because, I'd always thought when my husband was sober that would fix me. Absolutely, positively. When he's sober, it'll be better. When he's working and bringing home a regular paycheck, it'll be better. When he's a good dad, when he's a good father, when he's a good husband, all those things are going to make me better. And 2 years into his sobriety, he was all those things. He was just really doing whatever. But, all I know is to be angry, because this is how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism. I am hardwired for all the negative thinking. And, so no matter how well he was doing, it didn't even matter because I'm on point, I'm on guard all the time. And I remember one time hearing my sons, who are now, of course, bigger, and they're in the living room with their dad, and they're laughing and cutting up about something. But I'm on task because it's Saturday, and Saturday is laundry day because I work during the week and got to get all this stuff done before you have any fun. And so here I come marching through and as soon as I set foot in the living room with my laundry basket, all that laughter, gone. Dead silence. Because you know what I do? I suck the joy right out of a room. That's what I do right then. And I knew right then and there that that's not who God wanted me to be. That's not who I was supposed to be. But even worse than that, what I heard my own voice tell me was that you become your dad. This is what you're doing now. You're just trying to rule these people with force and make them do because you're so afraid of what may or may not happen if he drinks again, if he doesn't drink again. And you really have absolutely no control over that. So when I started coming to Al-Anon, it was really for all those things. It was because I wanted a shot at a good life. I didn't want to live in fear anymore, and I didn't want to live in the anxiety over what somebody was going to do or not do anymore. And I don't know why the heck I'm so weepy. Don't ask me. It's probably because it was our anniversary. Al-Anon will whoosh your ass out. I just don't even know what to tell you. Because I was never a crier about, man, I am just pissed and I'm in your face. And now I just waterworks at the frickin', see a frickin' sad soap commercial and I'm all crying now and crud like that. But I guess it's okay. I guess it's where I'm supposed to be. But anyway, so when I started going to Al-Anon, boy, I went to that first meeting. I called Gene up again, and he took me to this meeting. And, okay, tell me what we do. We go to meetings. We work the steps. We read the literature. Get a sponsor. I am all over it. I got a sponsor right away. My first sponsor is Jeannie. She had a really thick Dutch accent. You could hardly understand a word the woman said. But I picked her as my sponsor because I didn't want anybody like me. She was older than my mother. Like I said, she had this thick Dutch accent. She was divorced from her alcoholic, had never lived with sobriety, didn't have any kids. I picked her for all those reasons because I didn't want her to know what I was thinking, because I wanted as much opposite as I could because I'm still playing the game and all this stuff. And I remember the first time I used her as a sponsor, Butch had gone to work that morning and he had a dead battery. And he asked me to jump him, and I did. And when I did, he ran out of gas. And he got all mad about it and started yelling and screaming. So I started yelling and screaming at him, and he stormed off to work. And I went upstairs, called my sponsor, and reported his behavior. And it was bad for a sober guy in AA, 3 years. And so after I got done telling her what happened, she said to me, "You owe Butch an apology." I was like, oh my God, she's from Holland. She doesn't know how we do things in America. And and she missed the crucial who started it. Very important, So I didn't want to tell her she was stupid, so I started telling her the story again, because obviously she wasn't listening to the fine details here. And I hardly got started again, and she said, "Don't tell me what you just told me. I heard you the first time." And another thing, don't ever call me and start a conversation with Butch said or Butch did. I am not Butch's sponsor. I am Larcine's sponsor. And what she said was unkind and unnecessary. And she owes her husband an amends. I'll see you at the meeting tonight. Click. End of conversation. We are done. I learned valuable lessons. Never call your sponsor first thing in the morning because you got all day long to think about what she told you to do. And I got to do it because I'm a rule follower, I got to do it. So whatever time he walked in the door that night, I don't put nothing off. 5 o'clock, I marched right up to him and I said, "I am sorry I let your shitty attitude affect me the way that it did. And I'll try and do better in the future." Now, I know that doesn't sound like the best amends in the world. But I am here to tell you that was the best amends in the world, because I was this much willing to do something different. And I'd never been that much willing to, it's always his fault. I'm going to stay mad at you, and I'm going to milk it for days and weeks and whatever. But that day I took some sponsored direction, and my life got a little bit better. And I got a shot at a good life one more time. And now, of course, I know when it's my responsibility. I know when I need to make an amends now. But you got to start somewhere. And to think you can start off as a big giant skyrocket here or whatever is absolute insane and craziness. It doesn't ask us to do that. It says we grow at our own rate and pace. And as long as you're this much willing every single solitary day, there's nowhere to go but up. Absolutely nowhere to go but up. And that's pretty much taken us, from that spot to this spot. It was also very, very difficult for me to focus on getting a higher power here. I never grew up in any kind of religion whatsoever. My dad was a confirmed atheist, a killer of people. He didn't care. We're all going to hell and blah, blah, blah. And we're going to be his little princesses there. And he's the, king of darkness and blah, blah. Which, again, alcoholic, blah, 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 blah. And, and it's not that, but, I didn't grow up with anything like that. We never baptized, never went to church, never. I had no, and any concept I ever had of God, I never saw it because, why do my parents hate each other? Why is all this stuff going on? Why is all this misery? Why is all this pain? And I had a heck of a time. And I remember my home group. We had the panel about that. One night, this is in my first year, and they all know I'm very much struggling with the God thing, and so that night there's like 15 of them, and it's a step study meeting, but we didn't do the steps that night. That night, they specifically told me the meetings were, everybody here is going to share about their higher power in the hopes that you can find a higher power of your own. In our sharing. And so they all did. And when the meeting was all over, my friend Crazy Gene, he comes up to me and he's like, Larcine, did that help you? And I go, Gene, I appreciate what everybody's trying to do, but I just don't think this is going to work for me. I don't know that I can ever get the God part. And then Gene said to me, Larcine, why God gave you ears? And I'm like, because he's a mean guy, so I know he's going to say something mean. So I go, yeah, so I can hear what you guys are trying to tell me. He goes, well, in most people's cases, that's true. But in your case, God gave you ears so you'd have something to hold on to while you pull your head out of your ass. And because he went on to tell me, because there's a big, big difference between can't and won't. There's a big, big difference between can't and won't. And, and it's not that you can't. Right now it's that you won't. And why would we lie to you? Why would we lie to you? So that night I went home, I went in my backyard, I looked up at God, and I said, hi, God, it's Larcine Gantner. I live at 762 Rosecrans Avenue. Because, he don't know where I'm at, and I just said, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, but I'm willing. I'm willing to try, and that's all it's been. And my relationship with my higher power over this past almost 31 years has been this much at a time. And now I take God every single place I go. And I know that he's there, and I have absolutely no doubt about it. But it didn't happen in an hour talk, and a lot of times, when you get the opportunity to come up here, it's like, woo, I'm talking, this much at a time over a long course of time with a lot of people helping me. A lot of people showing me the way to go. If you're looking for heroes here, odds are that you're sitting right next to them, no doubt about it. I'm just going to share a couple really stories with you because I want you to know how sick I am no matter how long I've been in this program. And my sponsor always insists that I share these two stories because they're really reflect badly on me. But I was like 15 years in the program, and then my youngest son was like 19. He's living at home having a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol. I'm very fearful for this kid because what's the worst that can happen? They can die, and they do. Absolutely the worst thing that can happen, and it happens all the time. And of course, I had a lot of fear behind this happening to this kid. But as it turns out, this weekend I'm at we have our Roundup, our local Roundup, South Bay Roundup, 3,000 people. Great, fun, wonderful speakers, wonderful workshops, plus seeing all your friends and just hanging out. I don't know how you are, but when I come home from one of these things on Sunday, I've got like serenity coming out of every orifice of my body. I'm just all full of the love and the joy and the happy and the, just feeling really good. I'm also very disciplined in my life. I have a very disciplined exercise program. That's what I do. It works for me, and I do a certain amount of exercise every day. I've been gone for 3 days, which means I haven't done 3 days worth of exercise, which now means I have to walk on my treadmill for 16 hours straight to make it up. Again, this is just what I got to do for me. And so anyway, so as soon as we get home, I get in my exercise stuff, and I go out to the garage where my treadmill is, and next to my treadmill is my son's weight bench. And on my son's weight bench is a driver's license. I love driver's license. There's information on those things. And so and this is a woman's driver's license. She lives in Glendora, California. Holy moly, she's 32 years old. And then I instantly decide, like in 10 seconds or less, this woman has been in my house, had sex with my 19-year-old son, has 2 kids, wants to marry him and call me mom. I am all over it, information, poing. So I go run in the house, and Butch is in the house, and I show him the driver's license and nothing, because the man has no imagination whatsoever. So I tell him what I think happened over the weekend, and his eyes roll back in his head, as they often do when I tell him what I think happened. And he tells me to call Carol. Carol's my sponsor now. You're a whack job, and stuff. So I call Carol, and Carol agrees with Butch. And Carol rarely gives me direction, but that day she told me to shut up. Shut up. She goes, there's enough crap going on in that kid's life without you making up more garbage. She goes, I know you're afraid for him, Larcine, but it takes just as much thoughts to send good thoughts his way and prayers his way than to think negative stuff. So why don't you just think good things for him instead of crap? And I end my conversations, as I often do with my sponsor, because I've been coming for a long time. Never mind. I just got to be reminded. Just got to be reminded. Now, as it turns out, I don't see my son for 2 days because of his work schedule and school schedule, my work school schedule, or work schedule rather. And he comes in the kitchen like 2 days later, and he's got the driver's license. Now, I've forgotten about the driver's license. Many other crazy episodes have passed in the last 2 days in this head. So he walks up to me with the driver's license, and he says, Mom, what do you do when you find a driver's license? Well, I don't tell him what I do when I find a driver's license. Because it's a very bad example of somebody who's going to meetings, working the steps, working a program, sponsoring people, and people go, why do you keep coming to Al-Anon? 10 seconds alone in the garage keeps me coming back week after week after week. Because I am hardwired to think that way. I grew up in this crap. It's going to be my first thought every single time is going to be, I know to throw it away. I know it's garbage. But I bring it to you. You tell me what to keep. You tell me what's real. You tell me what's a bunch of crap. And then I got a shot at a good life. But if I try and figure it out by myself, I am doomed. I am doomed to think nothing but the absolute worst, whether it's happened or not. And that's not how I want to live my life anymore. But it's a daily reprieve, as Sterling said, based on a maintenance of a spiritual condition, which I come to you guys to make sure that that's the connection for me. I got to find out 8 years ago I was going to be a grandma. I was ecstatic beyond belief. My oldest son had been married several years, still no kids. Like, come on, get on with this, And so, now they have the popsicle sticks, so they know when the baby's coming, like right away, So it's like, so this baby's going to be born, never been a grandma, don't have an index card, make one up. First thing on the line is must be present when the baby's born. Don't ask me where the information lands here. I got to do it. It's on the list. So as it turns out, this baby is going to be born in May, and I got a lot of commitments in May. And my husband says, well, it's 9 months away. You might want to call those people and get out of those commitments if you want to be here when the baby's born. And let me tell you, when the alcoholic is now the voice of reason in your house, you really need meetings. You need a lot. And but I'm not, I said, no, it's okay. I'm not going to get all those commitments because those are Al-Anon commitments. I'm keeping them. It's going to be okay. And he goes, well, you might have to you might not be here when the baby's born if you're going on those commitments. I'm like, oh, shut up. I got it covered. Don't worry about it. And he knows better than to mess with me when I got a plan, and now I don't talk to don't ever take your plan to a sponsor because that's never good. They're plan busters, let me tell you, so, and I didn't take my plan to my home group because they'll ratch out to your sponsor, so there's no good there either. So I went right to God with my plan, because this was a big deal, and I know not to ask God for specifics. Believe you me, I know that for a fact. But I remember talking to God, and I'm just saying, I know I'm not supposed to ask for specific things, but this is about a baby being born, which really isn't a thing. It's not like a car or a dress or shoes or something. This is just about a baby being born. And you know how much service I do, God. So this one little baby just can't be born on the weekends, And I still remember God closing my eyes and seeing God's face, affirmative, you got it, girl, you got it. So I do all these commitments. Last one, I call my daughter-in-law Friday morning. Nothing going on. Fine. Okay, I'll see you Sunday. So I get on this plane, and I was like in freaking Montana or someplace, and I get off, and then my cell phone rings, and the baby has been born. I am so pissed. I can't even begin to tell you guys how angry I am. And I'm at this conference, and they're like, oh, we're so happy to have you. And I'm like, I hate you, But that's not what's coming out. That's what's on the inside. I'm all smiley on the outside, But I know to excuse myself, so I leave the room. I call my sponsor. I start screaming and yelling. I'm quitting Al-Anon. This sucks. When do you get to be there for your family? I ask God for one little weenie baby, not to be born on the weekend. Do I get it? No. I'm quitting, and then I'll never forget this. I'm in so much pain, and Carol says to me, I'll have to call you back. Oh, thank you. Gravy, gravy, gravy. Now I'm really livid. So I don't know how long it was. 2 seconds later, 3 seconds later, my cell phone rings. Now, I'm not sure how it is here in Lake Charles, Louisiana, but in L.A., boy, when your sponsor calls you, you have crossed the line, boy. They are bringing in the big guns to reel you back in, and so here's my sponsor. Apparently, I had freaked out my sponsor so much, she had to call her sponsor. She was totally unprepared for that. And now I hear, her sponsor's sweet, voice, and I've never been sponsored meanly ever, and I hear her sweet voice, and she goes, Larcine, did you turn your will and your life over to the care of God today? And I'm here to tell you, no matter what is going on, I turn my will and my life over to the care of God every single day. It is the easiest thing to do. It hardly takes any time. I can do it in 3.5 seconds every day. Don't miss doing that. And I said, of course I did. I know you guys have taught me to do that. You know I did it. She says, then you are exactly where you are supposed to be doing exactly what you are supposed to be doing. And a beautiful thing just happened. You became a grandmother, and you have a healthy baby grandson, and your daughter-in-law's doing good, and your husband and your son are giving you a blow-by-blow description of everything that's going on. And because you made some ridiculous rule about how this is supposed to go down, you are going to take this beautiful event and turn it into a piece of crap? Never mind. Hang up the phone. Now my memory is my husband picking me up Sunday morning from the airport, taking me to taking me to the hospital and holding that beautiful baby boy in my arms. But left to my own devices, 23 years in the program, I'd have turned it into a piece of crap because I made some ridiculous, stupid rule all by myself about how this is supposed to be happy. But I take it to you, and you guys give me the shot at a good life. And that's just what gets to happen here time and time again. I am not trustworthy by myself. I will not give myself the best advice. But you guys will, and you will give me the shot at a good life. Right when Matt was born, we found out that my husband, at 25 years sober, had cirrhosis of the liver as a result of hepatitis B. And that's been our battle these last almost 9 years now, and he just finished his 3rd round of interferon. And we're going to find out Monday if it worked or not. But then Tuesday we're going to a dance recital for my granddaughter, who's 5, who was born on a Wednesday, thank you very much. And because that's the way that it is here. You're going to have this and you're going to have that. And as Sterling so well said, there's no exceptions here. There's no guarantee that because you're here, everything's going to be smooth and wonderful. Stuff happens. My mom had breast cancer just the last couple of years ago at 76 years old. I've lost a sister to the disease of alcoholism. I lost a brother to a brain tumor. And this big fantasy in my head, that we're going to bring this whole family back together and have this wonderful Christmas, this thing that never happened before. What you guys have done is you've just given me yourselves. You're my wonderful family. And you're the things that I get to celebrate these things with. And the family that still exists, I get to take that to them as well. And nobody else in my family goes to Al-Anon or Alcoholics Anonymous, nor do I think that they're going to have any intention to. My husband, or my sister rather, lives with a very violent, angry alcoholic. And boy, if I could give this gift to anybody, wouldn't I give it to her? But I'm going to leave it to you guys to give it to her, and then I'll give it to your sister or your brother, because that's the way that it works here. And we get a shot at a good life. I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for giving me a shot at a good life. Thanks for having me.